Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Come on in. Hello, my name is Jamila Nuruddin, and I'm your host today for this amazing session. It's called Applied Polyvagal Theory in Yoga, Key Principles for Trauma Recovery with Dr. Arielle Schwartz. So without further ado, I'd love to go ahead and introduce you to Dr. Arielle Schwartz, PhD, who is a licensed clinical psychologist, certified complex trauma professional, and Kripalu yoga teacher with a private practice in Boulder, Colorado. She is an internationally sought out teacher and leading voice in the healing of PTSD and complex trauma. Dr. Schwartz is the author of 6 books, including the Complex PTSD Workbook, Therapeutic Yoga for Trauma, and the Post-Traumatic Growth Guidebook. She's dedicated to offering informational mental health and wellness updates through her writing, public speaking, social media presence, and blog. She believes that the journey of trauma recovery is an awakening of the spiritual heart. So beautiful. And without further ado, I'd love to pass it over to you, Arielle. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Jamila. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Jamila, you got some love in the chat of like, wow, you've been doing this like several sessions in a row. So, and I'll pass some love on to you. You do this very well. So thank you for holding space for me and for all of us. And thanks to Embody Lab and to Karen, who is also here providing our tech support today. So grateful for that. And I love seeing some familiar faces. Hi, Sonia. Hi, Phyllis. Hi, Mom. Hi, Victor. Some of you I got to be with a few hours ago this morning in a yoga class. So I'm just grateful to be back with you again. So we have a short and meaningful time to be together. I really love these opportunities to connect in real time. It's special because, of course, catching on recording is all good and well, but being here live together, we get to have a little bit of interaction, and I'm excited about that. So my intention for today is to do a shorter teaching, 20-25 minutes. Brief practice to integrate some of that material and then to open it up for interaction. I'd also love to maybe just start for a moment by inviting you to notice what you're hoping to get out of this session, even if you don't know yet quite what applied polyvagal theory in yoga is, and it feels kind of like, what are we talking about here? I'm going to give you a taste of it, knowing that there's a 30-hour version of this that I'll be starting in November here with Embody Lab. So you'll get a little taste of it today in our 75 minutes, and perhaps you'll join me back again in the fall. But before we go into even just where the science is, just showing up for yourself for a moment, because that's really what it's all about. Why would you choose to pop in on your precious weekend time? And knowing that, of course, there's some information, but what else brings you here? Is it a longing for connection? I know that's one of mine. Is it a longing for inner connection, a sense of more connection to your own embodiment? Yeah, and I'm glad the chat's open here. So kind of catching, if you want to put it in there, you're welcome to. I might read a few out loud if that's okay. Longing for inner connection and others. There is the exercise of the personal hero to imagine how a compassionate and good person would act in a given situation or relate to personal parts. And I want to tell you, you're my hero. Well, that is just very touching. Thank you. Thank you. That meant something here. Healing principles, healing, says Julia, interconnection, Antoinette, more understanding of my body, to share present moments. I'm curious how to integrate yoga into trauma healing. Longing for a stable yoga practice for trauma recovery and a desire to release painful experiences. Nice. Connection, re-inspiration, teaching. Beautiful. And what I love about, reading some of these out loud, even if I don't get to all of them, is that there is something powerful about intention. It's why I start everything that I do right there. What is your why? Because the power of intention focuses our attention, and it helps us get more of everything that we do, out of everything that we do. Longing for learning, healing. I felt called to be here. I love it. I love it. We're longing for connection and community, curiosity, self-care, to get control of my body back, diaphragmatic release. All right, I'll keep that in mind when we go into our little practice, Elvira. Thank you. Gratefulness, taking back wisdom to the people that I work with, alignment, good words. There's a whole lot of them here. So I'll catch one more before I shift gears here. And the word that I'm catching is unwinding. Unwinding. Beautiful. All righty. Good. Okay. So whether you've written that in the chat or internally honed in on what it is that is your why, take a moment to feel yourself in space, that the principles that I'll share, and I will go into a few slides today because I do like sharing material that way. I've also placed those slides in the chat. They have probably at this point been kind of well buried in the chat, and I'm going to stick them right back in one more time so that if you are looking to access those slides and want to go, what did she say there or why? They're right there for you. And they're easy to access for you. So when we speak about applied polyvagal theory in yoga, we are bringing together science and soma, the somatic experience, and then yoga is about union. And yoga is, for me, very much about the spiritual, the soulful work, the why for me. And so even though we might speak about some of the science and what is the vagus nerve and how does this help us create balance of our autonomic nervous system, those are some of the key pieces here. I don't want to lose ourselves in science to the degree that we have unfortunately kind of like retreated into the thinking brain only. I want to really help us reside in the felt experience all the way through, and in that inner meaning making or soul work, where if we think, for example, some of you have heard me share this metaphor, but if you are studying the violin, you might indeed study the tension of the strings, the placement of your fingers or the bow, the internal working mechanisms of this beautiful instrument. But if that's all that we study with the violin, we miss its purpose. And its purpose, of course, is the music that gets played. So we are here to make music. We are here to have extraordinary experiences. And we're looking, even within the process of trauma recovery, right? We're looking for those gems, those sparks that help everything make sense. It doesn't mean that I go, oh, I understand why this happened or that things happen for a reason. Oh, hell, hi, Elvira, it is you. I wasn't sure at first. Doesn't mean that everything happens for a reason. That's not what I mean when I say meaning making. It's about, for us, going into how do I create a meaningful life around my unique circumstances, including those difficult, challenging life circumstances. What allows me to feel, as one of you wrote in your intentions here, like I have a little more control back over my body or my nervous system? What helps me feel like I am responding as well as I can in my relationships so that I create more generative care and kindness within my life, right? And so we'll kind of hold that kind of soul level quality, even as we look at a little science. That said, I'm going to pull up some slides. If you are new to me, if you're new to my work, you will get to know that I like to pull up slides and then I like to take them back down because I like to see your faces. So get used to some visual shifts with me if you don't mind. And I'm going to start here with this one. So, like I said, this is our purpose for today. Well, that's okay. Go back for a second. It's just trying to remove some things off the screen here. Good. So we have our applied polyvagal theory in yoga, and we'll talk about some of the key principles of this model. So I've been saying hello a little more personally to some folks that are here today that have been regular practitioners with me, some for 2+ years. I took what was my local therapeutic yoga class here in Boulder, Colorado, where I reside. And when 2020 occurred, that went onto Zoom as well as so much of our lives. And quite honestly, I have kept my Zoom therapeutic yoga class going because what happened, and it's very similar to what's here with Embodied Lab, we created this international community. And it's just profoundly meaningful for me to have this meeting of mind and body and spirit from around the world around this shared intention of healing through movement and breath and intentionality and somatic awareness and so forth. So if the vagus nerve is a new topic for you, just a little bit about the what and the what are we speaking about here? This is a cranial nerve. It's your 10th cranial nerve. There are 10 cranial nerves. The 10th cranial nerve is termed vagus because vagus in Latin stands for wandering. So we call it the wandering nerve because unlike the other cranial nerves go just to the eyes or just to the glossopharyngeal, meaning like your mouth and tongue. Some of them go just to the ears. Some of them are the trigeminal nerve, which are going kind of around the connection of jaw and then around the occiput of your eyes. But the vagus nerve is different. This cranial nerve goes from the base of your skull, which is where all the cranial nerves come out of, from the brainstem, and then extends widely throughout your body. Primarily, it goes into ears, eyes, mouth, the larynx and pharynx in your throat, meaning your kind of voice muscles here, your heart, your lungs, and all of your digestive organs. It even descends all the way down into your sacrum. And so when we're keying into or connecting to the vagus nerve, we're really accessing this mind-body superhighway of communication. And most of that information is going from body up to the brain. So when we think about healing or healing from trauma, and we're working from changing our thoughts or changing our orientation, while that is very powerful and very important, it's only part of the picture. It's only about 20%. We're actually working against our biology. So when we change how we breathe or how we're attending to the body, what we're orienting towards in the present moment, we can work with the body to actually create a different nervous system state. And I'll borrow from Deb Dana in her applied polyvagal theory work in saying that that story follows state, so that when you create a felt sense of more calm, more ease, your brain, your mind is better able to upgrade the narrative that you're telling about your life. So we have this capacity to actually work in the felt sense to create more inner peace, more access to what is true, greater connection. Now, of course, connecting to the body is not always easy, right? If it was, boy, we wouldn't need yoga, we wouldn't need practice, we wouldn't need therapy or somatic therapies. Connecting to the body is challenging for a whole variety of reasons. One is that it is it's where the body keeps the score, bears the burden. The felt sense of our emotions and our sensations also holds our source of pain, our suffering. So we learn to build our capacity to turn towards what's held in the body slowly, mindfully, at a pace that we can tolerate. So there's a lot of phrases out there about hacking the vagus nerve, stimulating the vagus nerve, which I prefer. To me, I really love this idea that what we are doing is we are gently awakening a connection, a sense of greater connection to self. And through this, this idea of the vagus nerve also being a social connection system, it's our connection to other, to nature, to the world around us. So if we think of yoga as union, and the vagus nerve is facilitating a greater sense of union with self, other, and the greater world around us, it's a very central part of our yogic process. Steve Porges, the developer of something called Polyvagal Theory, which I can define in a moment, but he refers to the vagus nerve as the power cord to the computer, and the computer is the brainstem. The power cord is where the juice comes from, right? If you have your computer and you've forgotten your power cord and you're at 5%, oh no. But if you have that juice going in, the computer gets to do its job. Likewise, the change in your body mind doesn't really happen with the vagus nerve. We stimulate the vagus nerve to allow the brainstem to do its job really well. And what that means is that we're opening up the communication channels between body and brain so that your brain is getting the feedback from the interoceptive experience of your body. In other words, just the felt sense. Your brain is going to get that information of what it feels like to be you and what is the state of your nervous system. Am I afraid? Am I relaxed? Am I keyed up in some kind of life threat? This is a major danger moment. And so your vagus nerve can better give those signals to the brainstem so that your brainstem can actually better assess, am I really unsafe right now? Is that a historical experience of unsafe? So I can use other cues to let me know what is my current environment letting me know. Is this a current threat, or am I responding to a threat from the past? And then the brainstem is going to help adjust your metabolism, your digestion, your breathing rate, your heart rate, all that you need in order to be able to either respond to stress or go into rest and digest. I said that I would define polyvagal, and again, the work of Steve Porges with the vagus nerve. Poly refers to multiple. If I go back just to that slide for a second, if I speak about multiple vagal circuits, this idea that there is not just one vagal circuit, but that there's two, and that one of those vagal circuits is the lower circuit, the dorsal circuit that resides primarily below the diaphragm. The second circuit, which came on board evolutionarily later, is the ventral circuit, and it goes above your diaphragm, connecting to heart, lungs, and all around your face. When we are going into a rest and digest response, your entire vagus nerve is working as a single unit. When we, and it facilitates a parasympathetic relaxation response. So that's why the vagus nerve is so key for healing. We can really go into a deep rest state. But the other thing about this polyvagal perspective is that when we're experiencing a chronic traumatization or a life-threatening situation, the parasympathetic nervous system also has another expression, which is to go into a collapse, a withdrawal, an urge to disappear, or a feigned death, a faint response. And so understanding that our response to stress is not always fight, flight, freeze, but that sometimes it's this very low arousal state has been really beneficial for the trauma healing world and the somatic world of attending to trauma, so that we can start to help people differentiate, am I relaxed or am I collapsed? And the experience of being in chronic collapse has significantly detrimental effects on our health, both mentally and physically. Maybe one more thing that I'll name about this is that this is especially relevant. I'm going to take this down for just a second. This is especially relevant when we're working with yoga, meditation, because if we're going into something like Shavasana or a yoga nidra practice, which is yogic sleep practice, or meditation practice, individuals who have a history of trauma can kind of drop off the cliff, so that I'm not just going into relaxation, but I've fallen off into collapse, or I'm no longer feeling safe in that experience of stillness. The stillness then sometimes has this residue of immobilization in response to threat. So now suddenly I've gone into stillness, but I'm feeling either frozen or I'm feeling shut down, and it can be subtle. So learning to differentiate and really pay attention to your body's cues. Am I relaxed? Or am I collapsed? Or am I keyed up in anxiety? Am I in my sympathetic state, right? And getting to know the state of your nervous system. Your body, and for any of you that just attended Kathy Kane's talk, we learned that our bodies are responding to cues of threat all the time, and that this is occurring. Your nervous system is helping you adapt to threats all of the time without even consciously needing to be aware of it, right? Because we've been wired to respond very quickly in a fraction of a second to a potential threat out there. However, we can bring consciousness to that process. So there's a term that was coined by Dr. Stephen Porges called neuroception, which is your nervous system attuning to cues of threat out there, and then retuning your body in response to that threat. Now, sometimes your nervous system will also attune to cues of safety and retune your nervous system to that. But if there's cues of threat, even subtle ones, it can initiate this whole release of the stress cortisols and all this stress response, and it can do so without you even knowing why. What were you reacting to? So what we want to reclaim is more conscious awareness of, what am I responding to? Why am I responding? Is it accurate to my current situation? If it is, what do I need to do in relationship to that current situation to reestablish a greater sense of safety? And if indeed I'm safe now, and I'm still feeling the remnants of times when I was not safe, how can I use those cues of safety in the here and now? How can I change how I'm breathing? How can I attend to my body, to the discomfort? How can I make space with compassion to allow something new to emerge? When we are feeling discomfort, tension, contraction, suffering, it's not that we're going in to try and get rid of that. It's not that we want to make that wrong. What we're coming in to do is to attend lovingly, compassionately, to where we are stuck, to where our suffering is. And it's why, for me, community is so essential, because being able to have that held and witnessed and a larger container that helps us hold that, so long as we feel safe, that allows us to feel less exiled, less shameful in what we're going through. So I want to guide a brief practice. I'm going to share the slide and then I'll bring it back down. But this practice is what I refer to as neuroception, that awareness of the state of your nervous system, as in yoga, what we refer to as svadhyaya, or self-study. Basically, getting to know yourself, because from that ground of self-awareness, then we can create change. So for many of you have probably done this practice with me. For me, it is a daily practice. We can do this over and over. There's always something new to learn. And it's the 5-point check-in. Then we use that information to respond and self-regulate. So mind, body, breath, emotions, energy. But I'd like to take the slide down to be your guide. And with that said, since this is a mindful exercise, you get to choose A, whether you want to participate, B, whether you want your eyes open or closed. And if there is discomfort that you're bringing with you into this moment, you might look around your space. For me, I have roses on my altar from my garden that my husband brought in this morning, a plant. You might identify something in your space that feels grounding, nurturing, supportive. You might also choose me or our shared community as a source of grounding relationally, source of orienting to connection. And with that, then the invitation is to just begin to notice what's present for you, whether it's 6 a.m. for my friends and that side of the world, and whether it's getting into evening for friends over there, right? Just allowing yourself to notice the state of your mind, quality of your thoughts. And because it's a mindfulness exercise, I would also like to invite you to bring your attention to what is here without judgment, if possible. To come with curiosity, knowing that there is no right or wrong state of your nervous system, of your mind. And then begin to notice your body, just a global snapshot. There might be a lot of warmth or heat. You might feel rather dull. There might be particular areas of your body calling for your attention. You might also expand your awareness to notice areas of neutral or ease or pleasure even. And then bringing your attention to your breath. Very often, as soon as the invitation to notice breath comes up, a few things happen. One is that there's a desire to take a deeper breath. Right. The other is there's a little fear of bringing attention to breath. And whether relating to breath is sweet or scary, just allowing yourself to notice, hopefully without judgment and curiosity. And the next layer, if we think of this in the yogic system, as we're moving through the layers of the body or the koshas, the next layer is the emotional body. Noticing any emotional tone that is present for you today, be it grief, fear, be it joy, love. And since the intention is to create more space for what is, perhaps you can welcome, as Rumi says, whatever is present for you, like a guest to your guest house. And perhaps again, borrowing from Rumi, considering that each has been sent as a guide from beyond, even the despair, even the rage, right? How can we make space for more of what is? And simultaneously still stay oriented to that cue, that anchor of safety, whether it's the flower, the plant, the community connection. And then noticing the quality of energy that's here for you today. Are you fatigued at the end of the day? Are you very energized in this moment? I see you nodding. Gotcha. Yeah. Making space. Just knowing. Sometimes that feeling of a lot of energy can also be feeling a little keyed up. And so when we know where we are in that energetic realm, whether we're feeling more in the collapse or the uplifted or the anxious, we can fine tune that. And self-knowledge becomes the basis for responding and regulating. So now that there's some awareness of what you're bringing into this moment, just asking yourself for a moment, what do you need? Maybe it's a little stretch, morning stretch, afternoon, evening. Maybe it's self-touch to your face, to your arms. Maybe it's curling into a tight ball, honoring the contraction. So that organic response. And as I always say in this, you can listen to any talk that I do, any offering, seated, standing, laying down, curled up in bed, right? So this journey of listening to your body is the invitation for that depth of care, self-care, listening, communication. And this is that lighting up of the vagus nerve. We're not hacking anything at this moment. What we're doing is we're honoring congruence. And your body-mind relationship loves congruence, loves when you're listening to what is true for you. Yeah, gorgeous. It's beautiful to bear witness to you finding that for yourself. I'm going to share a few more slides, some ideas of what all of this is about, and we'll come back to a little bit of movement integration together. Another key term in the applied polyvagal theory model is this idea of co-regulation. And we can think of co-regulation as having two levels. One is interpersonal, that between us, that when one person is in what we call this ventral vagal regulation, or that calm, connected, available space, we can offer that regulating energy to others. It's one of the reasons that I love to teach and love to teach yoga, is that I bring myself into that state and I get to share it. And it becomes generative, and the reciprocal exchange becomes more than what I even can create on my own. The intrapersonal co-regulation is then what happens inside of you, that now once we have access to that external regulatory support and resource, we are better able to find regulation within self. Pardon me. And that self-regulation is the internal connection between your breath, your heart, your brain, and your embodied connection, so that you're better able to access that sense of safety within yourself. And it's why we can find that regulated state, not just with other people, which is beautiful and deeply beneficial, but also with ourselves on the yoga mat, or a quiet walk in nature, or a Tai Chi practice, or, fill in the blank of what your embodiment practice is. But then you are tapping into that internal regulating system. And all of this really needs to happen with the ground of safety and choice. When we have no choice, we feel trapped. When we feel trapped, our nervous system can perceive a threat, and we create safety through choice. Choice is empowering. So as applied to yoga, everything that's offered in the therapeutic yoga environment is offered within the framework of choice and invitational language, to borrow from David Emerson in his trauma-sensitive yoga. We are inviting the experience of, would I like to move right now? Would I like to be still? Would I like my eyes open? Would I like my eyes closed? Do I even want to engage in this practice? And then any yoga posture becomes what we call a secure home base for exploration, so that you get to make the shape your own. It's a moment by moment exploration of your body, your breath, movement, sensation, and emotion. We create safety through dual attention, and it's what I guided earlier. It's that orienting to a cue of connection or safety in your current environment that then lets you go towards the internal felt sense that might feel a little edgy or scary without becoming swallowed by the discomfort. So you can hold one foot in the orientation of safe enough now so that I can put one foot, dip a toe into the experience or the memory of a time when I didn't feel safe. In yoga, we achieve dual awareness through asana because we have the proprioceptive grounding of self in a pose, through drishti, how you focus your eyes, maybe on a cue of safety, through mantra or your internal intention, a phrase, a word that helps you anchor your why or what it is that you're growing towards, through mudra, by paying attention to the placement of your fingers, your perhaps your thumb and your first finger in that contact as a grounding point, even though I'm also feeling perhaps discomfort in my heart or my belly or my throat, so that I can hold awareness of two areas of the body simultaneously. Yoga also offers ways to create change in your nervous system rather directly. This is neuromodulation or nervous system change modulation. And we create these changes through breath, through self-applied touch, through touching areas of the face where your vagus nerve comes close to the surface of your skin, through eye movements or neck stretches, through humming, and sound or om, right? Through spinal movement, because the vagus nerve travels all along both sides of your spine, through diaphragmatic opening, which one of you had as an intention, I think Elvira did, to feel that there's more space where the diaphragm, the vagus nerve travels right through the diaphragm alongside your esophagus. So when we have excess tension in the diaphragm, it contracts around the vagus nerve. This is why diaphragmatic breathing is so valuable as part of our practice. Postural change and full body movement. And then we have the restful side of creating nervous system change through various forms of non-sleep deep rest found in meditation or yoga nidra. When we look at trauma recovery and embodiment, we integrate the tools within somatic psychology to the journey of trauma recovery and within yoga. So we honor the intelligence of the body. We find that free form movement, moving in however your sensations become your guide. We titrate, we go towards small amounts of distress coming back into areas of resource. That's the pendulation process as well, so that we don't just stay in the tension and contraction, we move in and out. And then that allows the tension to sequence from the core of the body out through the endpoints, which facilitates somatic repatterning, meaning that if there's this area of stuckness in the body, I didn't get to use my voice, or I didn't get to take up space, I didn't get to flee from a situation, you can actually give yourself permission through the embodiment practice, even on the yoga mat, to experience yourself as empowered now. That embodiment is empowerment, lets us take up space, lets us use our voice, lets us say no, lets us say yes, so that you can have that experience now that maybe you didn't get to have then at a time when you felt disempowered, even if then was last week or yesterday, right? Like the beautiful thing about the yoga mat is you create a safe space, even if it's temporary, even if you know that when you leave your yoga mat, you're still walking back out into the world that has all of these very here now realities that aren't safe. But we create the very precious protected safety of the practice so that you can claim something here and now, even if it doesn't surround the rest of your life around that practice. And that too is extremely important. It gives contrast and it lets you know what you want to create more of. Within the practice itself, we have these opportunities to facilitate equanimity or a connection to inner resource. And when we do this as a trauma-informed approach, we need to recognize that sometimes we need to give focus to our attention, because the open monitoring meditation, meaning a meditation with no anchor, lets your mind go wherever it's going to go. And sometimes our minds go to places of memories of fearful times if we've experienced trauma. So the focused attention meditation gives an anchor of a mantra or a single point of the eyes towards that beauty, that drishti, towards the mudra, as you can see in the picture here, towards an intention, perhaps loving kindness or self-compassion, that create more safety for a meditation practice. That's the trauma-informed approach. And that the settling into stillness, we anchor that with an inner resource, with our intention, with a memory of a time when you felt safe, so that you perhaps can finally reclaim the ability to rest in stillness without going into collapse or immobilization and fear. So the last thing I'll say, and I'll say this briefly, and then we're going to go into a little movement together, is that some of the key principles of the therapeutic yoga is that you are your own best teacher. I want to invite you to listen to the cues that you receive from your body, your mind, your breath about the state of your nervous system. That's the 5-point check-in we did. I invite you to honor your body, your pace. Let your breath be your guide. Every posture is an opportunity to explore. There is nothing to perfect, no goal to achieve. You are invited to follow your instincts, to make the practice a unique expression of you, to have fun, to let yourself find your inner joy, to stop and rest as often as you would like, and to let this practice nourish your body, mind, and soul. So with that said, I'm going to take down the slides. We'll take a little bit of time here for some movement, maybe not quite as much as I initially hoped, but come find me again and we'll do more movement together in other times and spaces when we have ample time. Finding a comfortable space if you would like to move towards some movement integration. And that can be on your couch, that can be on a yoga mat, doesn't really matter. I want to invite you to be comfortable in the practice. And as I often do, I will start, hi Lynn, I will start us with a poem. And this poem perhaps stands right alongside those intentions for those key principles for the practice. It starts with the words, "You do not have to be good." Some of you know what I'm about to read. This is Mary Oliver's Wild Geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. But meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese high in the clean blue air are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things. So with that said, take a moment, come on inside again, connect back to your intention, your why for today. I'll offer my intention for our practice here is to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. And I'm going to shift onto my mat for a few moments here. So whether you're in a chair, whether you're sitting on the floor, it doesn't really matter. What I would love for you to do is to Take your hands and then bring them right over your belly for a moment. Just right here, right over your navel. And to begin to explore how it feels to breathe across the diaphragm, to open through the abdominal cavity for a moment. And for me, very often the best way for me to do that is actually to incorporate a little spinal movement with breath so that we can come into the extension. That's the inhale pattern. On the exhale, as you draw your navel back, let yourself go toward a contraction. And then we begin to move and breathe like this. Inhaling, expand, exhaling, contract. Now you get to find your range of motion here and your pace with the breath and movement. Because it's profoundly common to carry tension in your abdomen and your diaphragm, it can be a little uncomfortable to go toward that. So as we hold the collective, why would we do this? Why would we go toward something uncomfortable? I'm going to borrow one of your key words that came in as intentions, unwinding. It's how we unwind. We honor and greet what is. Now, you might bring one of your hands to your heart while keeping one on belly or diaphragm and explore that relationship as you go in and out of the spinal movements and the conscious breathing here. Noticing that what we are aiming to do is open up a pathway from belly through diaphragm to heart. And it's up to you. You can inhale in and out of your nose. You might create a sound with the breath, a sigh, a ha. Inhale, let yourself lengthen, expand. And exhale. And you might even mirror this movement now, letting your arms come into action, feeling your way into that expansion, and then exhale, really honor the contraction again. Two more just like that, just feeling your way through that range of motion. And then pausing for a moment in the center. Noticing what's beginning to move, shift in just that initial pranayama and movement. And if there is some lingering tension calling your name, if we bring that in like the guest in the guest house and we bring it some tea, bow and say, thank you for letting yourself be known. I'm glad you're here, even if it's hard to relate to you. And then rubbing your palms together for a moment. And we're working our way belly up. We're following the vagus nerve. I'm going to invite you to just come towards your throat. Very gentle, light touch of your fingertips. And tucking your chin, you might contract in your throat. And lifting your chin, a little bit of opening right here. And you can grate this sensations in your throat with sound. Or in one of our yogic breath practices, you can find Lyons breath if you like. And this time your fingers will be like little claws and just stick out your tongue and ha. And finding that again. A chance to let something go. You can even embrace your inner ferocity here. And then pausing, letting your palms rest. Eyes can reorient to your item of beauty or to the sense of this global community. There's around 600 of us practicing together right now. Wow, right? Sensing the not aloneness of this moment. And then allowing yourself to greet your very own face. Little sweeping movements across your forehead, your cheeks, your ears, your jaw. Maybe the back of your neck, maybe shoulders down to elbows, or all the way down to opposite palms, greeting hand to hand. And from here, if you're on a mat, you can do this in a chair as well. If you're on a mat, I'll invite you to come into all fours. If you're up in a chair, you're going to find a little bit more of that spinal movement seated. And in either case, using the shape seated or in a tabletop as the home base for your exploratory movement, allowing yourself to reach, stretch, finding a little bit of honoring that you have the freedom, the mobility to take yourself in any direction at this moment. That direction might be resting in child's pose. That direction might be a full body stretch. It might be a downward facing dog, right? Like it's totally your practice. You can add sound. You can reach one leg and an arm. But perhaps most importantly, let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Allow the movement to be guided by your internal teacher that resides in your sensations, in your embodied soulful self. And then from here, an invitation to return to stillness. That stillness might be seated. It might be a child's pose, heavy in your forehead. It might be laying down on your back. Whichever version of stillness you are taking, I want to invite you to bring your intention with you. This is the anchor. We call these anchors because just like a ship in the harbor, it's anchored in the safety of the surrounds, the protected waters. Whereas if we were to go into the open sea, there's a lot of unpredictability out there. So the anchor of safety might be your key word. It might be opening your eyes and gazing at something that reminds you that in this moment, indeed, you are being held within this fabric of a community. And then allowing yourself to notice what it feels like for your body to settle into the support, whether that's support of your chair, the support of the earth beneath you, the support of your body curled upon itself in child's pose, whatever your chosen shape is. And to explore those subtleties of settling into stillness, anchored in a connection to safety. listening to yourself here. What do you need next? For our practice today, for the sake of time, I will invite us to perhaps meet up together. I'm going to step closer to my screen here, to my computer, so that I can connect with you all via our gallery of faces. I think, Jamila, I heard you call it our Brady Bunch screen earlier today. It made me smile. And I would love to just open it up to any questions, any comments, any reflections that are present for you, knowing this is a short practice, but nonetheless potent. See here, and I don't see Jamila here, but
I'm here. Can you see me
oh,
now?
perfect. I can. Oh, good. I had a moment of going, I lost my support.
I am here. We
Oh,
can
hi.
either question live. People can raise their hand and ask a live question, or I can reach into the box and pull out some of the more highly voted questions while maybe that person raises their hand.
Great. Great. Let's start there. That sounds perfect.
Wonderful. Oh, the order's changing.
Mhm.
Okay, we have Shannon asked, we usually hear about the negative impacts of being in an activated fight or flight state. Can you speak to what the health impacts are from being in a collapsed dorsal state? Can you also explain the threat of low cortisol when we're in dorsal withdrawn state for a long period of time?
Yes, I shall. All right. So if we think about the experience of being in kind of high stress, high cortisol, we typically think of that as immunosuppressing because cortisol and the immune system have an inverse relationship, and that it is also associated with high blood pressure, hypertension. But this question is asking about what happens when we get stuck more in a collapse or a faint response, or what we consider a dorsal vagal response. And the dorsal vagal response, now we've got suppressed cortisols or hypocortisol state for an extended period of time. The health of our nervous system allows us to transition rhythmically between sympathetic and parasympathetic. But if we're stuck in a parasympathetic state, then what starts to go off the rails is that our digestive system is stuck in the on mode, right? Rest and digest, but now we're constantly digesting. So we have more propensity towards acid reflux or other digestive disturbances, IBS and so forth. There's also a reduction of the brakes on the immune system. So the immune system gets enhanced temporarily. That's a good thing. That's why we want the rest and digest for immune health. But if we're stuck in the parasympathetic shutdown, the immune system is basically stuck in the on position. And so it begins to not only target viruses and bacteria, but if there are none, it will begin to target healthy tissue in the body, leading to inflammation conditions or autoimmunity. Short answer, complex question, great question. Thank you.
Same. Thank you so much for that. Very, very informative. Why don't we take a live one? We have Melissa R. with your hand up.
Hi, Melissa.
Unmute you and spotlight you.
Hello again, Arielle.
Hi, good to see you.
I'm grateful for the earlier question because I wanted to ask more about if you getting stuck in the collapsed mode and the depressive mode and feeling like not having all of the resources that I might normally have to shift out of that. And I want to connect that to one of the slides I saw earlier about not having choices and in a state of feeling like not having choices that feels unsafe. And sometimes I found myself in a situation where a lot of those choices were taken just suddenly, a lot of things happen at once. So I
Mhm.
found myself in a prolonged state of collapse.
Right.
And so sometimes it seems the usual resources and activities aren't really helping
Yes.
as much. And what would be a different or bigger, or I don't know, something new that would help to shift out of that? Like, what's a new response to that? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So I think I'm going to speak very broadly of like some of the tools that help us get out of an extended dorsal vagal collapse when we've gotten stuck there for a period of time, especially in these environmental factors that you're speaking of where there's kind of ongoing cues of that are feeling unsafe and leading us to feel trapped. So the one of the things that we can remember is that the body it really just lives in the present moment. So even if a year ago, 5 years ago, or 5 minutes ago, that trapped feeling happened, if we can help reorient to not trapped right here and now, we start to reclaim some of the healing capacity in the here and now. So that might be wiggling your fingers, wiggling your toes. It can be very subtle, Melissa. Sometimes we're looking for the next big thing, but I really want to say that it's the accumulation of a lot of the subtle, gentle practices and the consistency and the repeated returning to those practices that ultimately make the biggest accumulative difference. In the times when I have been going through the hardest phases, I am stacking the resources, more time in nature. And I love that you're sitting outside, more time listening to the music that I love, reaching out to the people that I love. If I can, getting body work, if I can, more therapeutic support. So trying to access the supports that we can. And here's what's delicate about the resilience question you're asking, which is that we're, as much as we can intrapersonally regulate, we can regulate from the inside out with these practices, we really do need the grounding of the interpersonal regulation. We need that co-regulation to help fuel us when we feel depleted and can't hold ourselves or can't do it for ourselves only. And that's what's so delicate too about having access to resources. So I'm so glad that you've come in here, that you've accessed the resource of a free summit, right? Like we can find those resources wherever we can, and we just need to keep stacking them until we start to feel that there's more buoyancy around a very depleted experience. So thank you. Thank you. I want to make sure that we have more questions because I know we have a whole lot of them in the chat and another hand raised as well. So Jamila, let's take another one from the chat.
That's just what I was going to suggest. I love it.
Good.
So Emily asked, when I slow down and become more aware of my body, I almost always end up crying, which makes it difficult to want to calm myself in this way. Do you have any tips around this? I find it very confusing.
Yeah. So, to me, tears ideally can be held in a very healing perspective, like something's releasing, something's letting go. However, when we have a different relationship to that crying, one is that it can be a conditioned feeling of isolation, aloneness, loneliness, that crying is now kind of compounded by other experiences. Maybe we got the message that someone else couldn't tolerate or handle our sadness. Maybe we struggle to know how to hold that for ourselves in the most loving, compassionate way. So if that's occurring, I say that that's again where we want to be held in the co-regulating environment where someone else can really be that other that says, your grief is welcome here. And what is it like to know that you're not alone with that grief? And can you sense whether this grief is cycling with all of these negative beliefs about yourself? Or can you hold that these tears might also be healing, awakening, allowing for something new, a release? So we want to fine tune that relationship to that habitual crying response. But ultimately, when we have the sufficient support space for it, I do believe that the emotions have an intelligence.
that. Love
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you so much. That was very beautiful. We have another question from Rachel, who's asking, when turning to breath doesn't feel safe, is that always because of dorsal vagal shutdown? What else could be going on?
No, I would say that my very short answer on a complex question and a great question is that the breath has 4 components to it. The breath has the inhale, the top of the inhale, which could be a pause, the exhale, and the bottom of the exhale. So there's 4 different elements that could be triggering with breath. The inhale pattern and the hold at the top are sympathetic, right? And so maybe something led you to go, oh, or right, and either feel the fear in relationship to a inhale pattern or a holding of your breath. Maybe there's a trauma link that's right there. Maybe it's an emptiness or that parasympathetic exhalation that leads us to feel lost or disconnected or afraid to let something go. Maybe it's the fear that shows up at the emptiness that resides at the bottom of the exhale. So then we can get to know which part of the breath is triggering me. Then we can become curious about, can I find an aspect of the breath that feels a little safer? And what might I wrap around that part of the breath that feels scary to me? Or what's the memory that's coupling with the breath that's coming through those gates? And then maybe I do some trauma work around that memory. So breath itself is an access point to the trauma, which is why it's sometimes scary, but it's not the trauma itself. Just like somatic movement might give access to the felt sense of trauma, but the somatic movement is not the trauma. So our goal is to uncouple the relationship between movement or breath and the trauma response, knowing that they become the gates that open that then allows us to access what's held in there. And then the therapeutic support or the trauma work becomes the working to unwind what's there. Yeah, thank you. Jamila, I lost you again.
I think she has actually gone this time.
Oh,
So
okay. Do you want to help me with the questions, Karen?
yeah.
We'll take a few more before we close out.
Let's see what's most upvoted.
Okay, thank you. And then we
So,
also have one hand up that we could take as well, but I'll see if we can take a look here too.
So did we answer the question about when turning into breath doesn't feel safe?
Yes, we got that
Yes.
one.
Okay. So the next most upvoted one is, do you have any recommendations on how we can use polyvagal and yoga with those with chronic pain or limited mobility?
Yes. So remembering that, first of all, yoga is 8 limbs, and that asana is just one of them. Pranayama is one of them. The first 2, the yamas and the niyamas, are really about the ethical guiding principles that help us relate to ourselves nonviolently, with compassion, with wise guidance about the managing our energy. And the final limbs of the 8 phases are really about our attention. It's about how we focus attention outward, inward, and then perhaps the opportunity to drop into meditation or the expanded spiritual states. So when we're working with someone with limited physical mobility or pain, whether that's you yourself, whether that's me myself, right, we start with what is. We work most gently, lovingly toward the experience. We titrate around pain. We bring attention to cues that are not pain related. We notice the overcoupling of the fear with movement that might be exacerbating. I'm so afraid if I move, I'm going to injure myself. And if indeed we've been cleared medically to do the movement, sometimes what we need to do is actually reclaim a relationship to, I can move safely, without going into that secondary layer of, I'm so afraid. And now that fear is leading to this extra contraction of the muscles that can then worsen or exacerbate pain. So pain is a very complicated science. I'll say that I'm very interested in trying to pop in tomorrow afternoon, or it's my afternoon for me, for for the final talk tomorrow, because that one is going to be specifically on pain. And I always love to hear what others are saying about that too. So short answer, again, big question.
Okay, so let's just take the Manel, who has her hand
Thank
up.
you.
Come on camera, Manel.
I'm trying to come on camera, but I'm not able to for some reason. And it's okay. I'm perfectly fine just speaking. So hi, Dr. Arielle Schwartz. It's lovely to join this Somatic Healing Summit. It's one of my first ones, and very grateful for resources like this that have popped on my Instagram feed. But the question that I had put in the chat was, when one isn't used to having choice in some parts of life and is retraining themselves to see choice as a liberating experience, how do you deal with this overwhelm of newness? And some context behind that I can offer is that I've been retraining myself to see choices as not an overwhelm, but a gateway to liberation of self and healing. And in that, the fear of these choices of choosing the wrong place or stepping in the wrong way to not bring on more trauma can sometimes put me in that collapse state. So just wondering what you would offer here for some guidance.
Yeah. My to me, it's a very complex question. Every question is a good question, and it's a complex question because what I'm imagining is that if there was an experience of there weren't choices for so long, and now all of a sudden I have choices, it feels a little bit like the way that learned helplessness and coming out of learned helplessness can be like, oh my gosh, like I lived inside of a certain pseudo safety of this confines of the range of possible actions I can take. And now all of a sudden that door opened wide. I don't know if I'm quite ready to walk out there. That feels a little scary to me. And so we might work, I'm going to speak parts language for a moment, but we might have to go towards the part of self that feels afraid at the array of choices that are available for me now, and get to know where that fear comes from and what historically that's related to. So thank you for that question. You're getting a response in the chat about that also being a great question, and that we are very often going to meet our parts on the mat. If we look at that from an internal family systems perspective, the part that doesn't know yet how to move. This morning I was teaching class. Many of you who were at class this morning are here. And that the experience that one person shared is that in a previous class, I had offered that phrase, listen to your body, let your body move like your favorite animal, just waking up from a nap, just finding that free form movement. And she said this morning, the first time you said that, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know how to listen to my body. And through repeated practice, that door has opened. It feels safer to listen to, how does your body say yes? How does your body say no? That's the journey that then helps to guide the decision-making around the array of choices that now is available. So thank you, Manel.
Thank you so much for answering that question. That's very helpful. I hope to put that into my practice.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I know that we are just bumping up against time. So I've now lost Karen and Jamila. Karen, are you
Back,
up?
I'm back.
Oh, you're back too. I'm like, okay. I think we're at time. I know there's so many more questions. What I want to encourage you all, I don't think it's up on the Embody Lab website yet, but I'm going to be teaching a 30-hour program that's a much expanded version of what we got for 75 minutes today. Come back, come hang out with me. I would love to hang out with you, and we'll have a whole lot more time for questions when we have that expanded space.
Love that. Thank you so much, Arielle. This was such a beautiful and powerful workshop today.
Thank you all. I'm just going to put my little Zoom emoji that now has like little sparkles around it. Thank you for the upgrade, Zoom. Thank you. It's such a joy to be with you. Thank you again, Jamila and Karen, for holding the space. Okay. Till next time.